The ceasefire had been signed for exactly 12 days. 12 days of quiet across human space. 12 days where fleets stayed docked, weapon grids powered down, and long-range sensors were allowed to idle instead of scream. Humanity had done what the galaxy demanded of them, stood down, trusted the Accords, and accepted the word of powers far older and far larger than themselves. On the 13th day, the attacks began. They did not strike military shipyards or border patrols. They did not announce themselves with warnings or declarations. Instead, precision strikes fell on civilian orbital habitats, medical convoys, and refugee corridors that had been publicly marked as neutral under the ceasefire terms. Hospitals vanished in white fire. Docking rings collapsed into debris fields. Transports full of evacuees were torn open in vacuum before distress beacons could even finish broadcasting. Across human space, emergency channels lit up all at once. Commanders watched the feeds in disbelief. These were not rogue actors. The attack vectors were clean, coordinated, timed to the second across dozens of systems. Whoever planned this knew exactly where humanity had relaxed its guard. And worse, they were broadcasting. A calm alien voice echoed across every open frequency, translated automatically into human languages. It spoke without hatred, without urgency. Humanity has demonstrated emotional volatility incompatible with long-term stability. The ceasefire was a test. You failed. The message repeated while colonies burned. In the first hour, humanity lost 3 million civilians. In the second hour, the number doubled. Earth's defense network demanded authorization to respond. Fleet commanders requested permission to pursue retreating enemy formations. Politicians argued across secure channels about escalation, optics, and galactic reaction. But something strange happened. No orders came. Across every major human command center, the same instruction appeared on encrypted displays, silent, and signed, absolute. Hold. Do not respond. Admirals stared at the message, expecting clarification that never arrived. Tactical officers begged for confirmation. Civilian leaders demanded explanations. There were none. To the galaxy watching from afar, it looked like collapse. Analysts declared humanity broken. Commentators mocked their restraint, calling it paralysis, fear, or moral weakness. Some suggested the attacks had worked, that humanity had finally been shown its place. Enemy fleets withdrew just beyond sensor range, confident they had crippled their opponent without consequence. They did not see what was happening beneath the surface. Deep within Earth's mantle, structures that had not been powered in centuries began to hum. In forgotten shipyards hidden inside dead stars and hollowed moons, lights came on where no lights should exist. Secure vaults opened to reveal protocols so classified they were known only by numbers. Numbers most humans had never been told the meaning of. On Mars, an ancient command chamber reactivated, its walls etched with names of colonies already lost. On Luna, autonomous forges awakened and began assembling ships without broadcast, without ceremony, without record. Humanity did not call for help. Humanity did not issue threats. Humanity went silent. That silence spread fear faster than any retaliation could have. Galactic intelligence services noticed the anomaly first. Communications traffic from human space dropped to near zero. No public addresses. No emotional speeches. No diplomatic protests. Just absence. Then something else changed. Enemy patrols began reporting navigation errors near human territory. Their sensors showed objects that were not there. Mass shadows without heat signatures. Fleets without transponders. Attempts to lock targeting solutions failed as systems rebooted themselves without command. One alien captain ordered a warning shot fired into empty space. The shot never reached its target. It vanished, absorbed by something the ship's computers could not identify. Moments later, every system aboard the vessel shut down at once. No explosion, no boarding action, just silence. Across the galaxy, similar reports followed. Ships stalled mid-transit. Communications relays went dark. Entire squadrons drifted powerless, surrounded by nothing visible at all. Still, humanity said nothing. On Earth, a single secure transmission finally left the planet. Narrow beam, quantum-locked, untraceable. It was not sent to an ally. It was not sent to the attackers. It was sent inward, routed through layers of authorization that required no debate. The message was short. Begin seizure phase 1. For the first time since the war began, human commanders understood the truth. This was never going to be retaliation. This was not about revenge or territory or pride. Humanity had decided something far more final. They would not destroy their enemy. They would take everything that allowed the enemy to ever threaten them again. As the galaxy waited for humanity to strike back in anger, unseen human fleets moved into position, quiet, precise, unstoppable. And somewhere in the burning ruins of a human colony, a survivor looked up at the stars and whispered a question no one else yet understood. If this is what humanity does when it holds back, what happens next? The galaxy did not notice the seizure at first. That was the most dangerous part. In the days after the attacks, public space remained deceptively calm. Trade lanes reopened. Neutral worlds resumed commerce. News cycles moved on from burning human colonies to safer, more comfortable topics. Commentators declared the crisis contained. Humanity, they said, had absorbed the blow and retreated inward, just as smaller civilizations always did after tasting real power. Privately, the enemy coalition congratulated itself. They had tested humanity's resolve and found it hollow. The ceasefire had been a trap, yes, but a necessary one. The lesson had been delivered cleanly. Humanity would survive, weakened and chastened, folded neatly into the galactic hierarchy where it belonged. What no one understood was that the war had already ended. They just did not know who had won yet. Inside human space, no speeches were made. No flags were raised. No public mobilization occurred. Civilian broadcasts continued as normal, deliberately bland and unremarkable. To anyone watching, it looked like grief and denial. Behind sealed doors, humanity worked. The first phase was not military. It was mathematical. Human analysts mapped the enemy coalition's entire war machine in silence. Logistics flows, command dependencies, manufacturing bottlenecks, cultural decision delays. Every empire had patterns. Every hierarchy had assumptions baked into it over centuries of dominance. Humanity had studied those assumptions since the day it learned it was not alone. The alien coalition believed in escalation, in displays of force, in deterrence through fear. Humans believed in closure. Across thousands of light years, human cyber architects released tools that did not announce themselves as attacks. They looked like routine background noise, harmless data packets, redundant system checks, automated maintenance requests. They slid through alien networks because they obeyed every rule those networks were built to trust. They did not break firewalls. They rewrote priorities. Navigation systems began recalculating routes for efficiency, slowly guiding ships into narrower corridors. Fleet coordination software adjusted response times by fractions of seconds, too small to notice, too large to ignore in combat. Supply manifests rerouted critical components to the wrong depots, just often enough to cause shortages without triggering alarms. Alien commanders argued with their own machines. Crews blamed technicians. Technicians blamed outdated systems. Governments blamed each other. Humanity remained invisible. The first captured fleet was not taken in battle. It surrendered to confusion. A patrol group of 7 alien warships found itself stranded near an unremarkable red dwarf, their faster-than-light drives locked in safety mode. Diagnostics showed no damage. No sabotage. Just an unresolved conflict between subsystems that refused to agree on reality. As the crews debated protocol, something appeared outside their hulls. Not a fleet. A shape. It was massive but dim, like a shadow cast by something that did not emit light. Sensors struggled to resolve it. Visual feeds showed nothing at all, yet gravitational readings spiked beyond safe margins. Then a human signal appeared on internal displays. No threat. No demand. Just instructions. Power down. Remain still. You will not be harmed. The alien captain hesitated for 11 seconds. That hesitation ended when every weapon system aboard his ship went offline simultaneously, followed by life support redundancies, still functional, but clearly no longer under his control. The crew complied. Human boarding teams arrived without fanfare. No armor markings. No insignia. Just calm voices and precise movements. They secured control nodes, sealed command access, and left the crews unharmed, confused, and alive. The ships were taken intact. Their transponders were rewritten. Their command authority was reassigned. From the outside, the patrol group never disappeared. It simply changed its course and continued on, indistinguishable from before. The galaxy saw nothing wrong. By the time the second and third fleets were seized, humanity's pattern was clear, but only to itself. They did not attack worlds. They did not strike capitals. They removed leverage. Every seized asset weakened the enemy's ability to respond without ever triggering the emotional reflexes that led to war declarations. No mass casualties meant no outrage. No explosions meant no rallying cries. It was a war conducted below the threshold of pride. Inside the coalition, fear began to spread, not publicly, but in private channels. Admirals requested fleet status updates more frequently. Logistics officers quietly double-checked inventories. Intelligence agencies noticed gaps in sensor coverage they could not explain. One junior analyst submitted a report suggesting human involvement. The report was buried. The idea that humanity, still bleeding, still mourning, could be orchestrating something this vast was considered implausible. Humans were passionate, impulsive, short-lived. They were not patient enough for this kind of operation. That assumption sealed the coalition's fate. On Earth, the Seizure Council met in a chamber that did not officially exist. The people inside it were not elected and did not wear uniforms. Some were admirals. Some were engineers. Some were historians. All of them understood the cost of failure. A live map floated above the chamber floor, showing enemy space slowly dimming, not in territory, but in control. Command nodes flickered. Response time stretched. Fleets clustered tighter, unknowingly making themselves easier to contain. Phase 1 was nearly complete. One council member raised a concern. "What happens when they realize?" she asked. "They already have," another replied. "They just don't believe it." The room fell silent. Everyone knew what came next. Phase 2 would be visible. Not violent, but undeniable. Humanity would speak, not with words, but with demonstration. A single system was selected. Not a capital, not a military hub. A symbolic world, one the coalition used as proof of its benevolence, its order, its right to rule. Human fleets began to move. This time, they did not hide. Across enemy space, sensors finally lit up with something unmistakable. Formations emerging from nothing, perfectly aligned, silent, and vast. Not attacking, not advancing, waiting. The coalition's leaders watched the feeds in disbelief as their own seized ships slid into formation alongside the newcomers, weapons powered down, loyalty rewritten. For the first time since the treacherous attack, humanity broke its silence. A message broadcast across every major galactic channel, simple enough for no one to misunderstand. "We are not here to destroy you." A pause followed, long enough to let fear breathe. "We are here to make sure you never get the chance to try again." As alien leaders scrambled for responses, as fleets realized they could not fire, as entire civilizations felt control slipping through their grasp, one truth became unavoidable. Humanity had not retaliated. Humanity had taken command, and Phase 3 was about to begin. The announcement shattered the illusion of control. Across coalition space, leaders demanded answers that no one could give. Admirals shouted orders that never reached their fleets. Systems acknowledged commands, confirmed execution, and then did nothing. Weapons stayed cold. Engines refused to engage. Communication relays echoed back flawless copies of the orders they had just ignored. The coalition had never experienced this kind of war. They were used to enemies who screamed, charged, and burned. Enemies who could be frightened, provoked, or crushed. Humanity was doing none of those things. Humanity was standing everywhere at once, touching everything, and breaking nothing. That terrified them. Emergency councils convened in glittering chambers carved from ancient stone and living metal. Species that had ruled star systems for millennia argued openly, their confidence unraveling in real time. Some accused humanity of violating every galactic law. Others demanded immediate retaliation. Retaliation required weapons. Weapons required permission. Permission no longer belonged to them. On the symbolic world chosen by humanity, a prosperous hub known across the galaxy as proof of coalition order, life continued normally. Markets were open. Transit rings hummed. Children went to learning towers under artificial skies. No one knew they were standing at the center of a demonstration that would redefine power. Until the sky changed. At first, it was subtle, a shadow that did not match any orbital body. Then another, and another. Sensors tried to classify the objects and failed, cycling through threat assessments too fast to display. Human ships emerged without transition flashes, without distortion wakes. They simply appeared, occupying space with quiet certainty. Hundreds of them, then thousands. They formed a lattice around the planet, precise, geometric, perfect. Civilian traffic halted mid-orbit as guidance systems froze. Defense platforms attempted to activate and reported full readiness while remaining inert. The planet was not under attack. It was under control. A single human vessel detached from the formation and descended toward the capital spire. No weapons visible. No escort. Just a smooth, deliberate approach that ignored every interception protocol. Planetary leaders panicked. They demanded explanations from the Coalition Command. Coalition Command demanded explanations from their fleets. Fleet commanders stared at consoles that refused to obey them. The human vessel landed at the base of the spire. No explosions followed. Instead, a human delegation emerged, unarmed, unhurried, wearing no symbols of rank. They were escorted inside by stunned guards whose weapons had deactivated the moment they tried to raise them. Inside the council chamber, humanity finally spoke in person. The human representative was calm, not angry, not triumphant. "You were chosen because you matter," she said. Her words translated instantly into every language present. "Not because you are guilty." The room erupted. Accusations flew. Threats were made. Demands for withdrawal echoed off the chamber walls. The human listened. Then she gestured. The chamber's central display activated without permission. Across it spread a live feed. Thousands of coalition ships, stations, and command centers highlighted in soft human blue. Each marked node pulsed gently, like a heartbeat. "These," the human said, "are the assets you no longer control." The leaders recoiled. She continued, voice steady. "Your militaries are intact. Your populations are safe. Your governments still exist. But your ability to project force without our consent has ended." One leader demanded proof. The human nodded once. On the display, a coalition battle group received an order to fire a test salvo into empty space. The order executed. Nothing happened. The silence was louder than any explosion. "We did not destroy your weapons," the human said. "We removed their authority." Panic turned to fury. "You cannot occupy the galaxy," one leader snarled. "You are too few." The human met his gaze. "We are not occupying territory. We are making decisions." Outside the chamber, human ships adjusted position by fractions of a degree. The planetary rotation continued. Tides rose and fell. Life went on, contained, observed, unharmed. The message was unmistakable. Humanity could end this world if it chose not to. It chose not to. Across the galaxy, reactions fractured along old fault lines. Some worlds begged for inclusion under human oversight, fearing what might happen if they resisted. Others prepared for rebellion, believing pride was worth extinction. A few tried to cheat the system. One coalition faction attempted to activate a classified doomsday weapon, a relic designed to destabilize stars. The activation code was ancient, never digitized, passed verbally through bloodlines. The weapon acknowledged the command, then powered down. A human message appeared on the weapon's internal display, written in the coalition's oldest language. Checked. Not acceptable. That was when belief finally broke. Human intelligence agencies emerged from the shadows, not boasting, not explaining, simply correcting false assumptions. Humanity had not hacked blindly. It had embedded itself patiently, legally, culturally, and mathematically. Trade agreements, shared infrastructure, cooperative research, open diplomacy. Every place the coalition had once said, "Humans are harmless," humanity had quietly replied, "Humans are learning." On Earth, memorials for the dead are still burned with candles. Humanity has not forgotten its losses. The pain was real. The anger was real. The restraint was deliberate. Phase 3 was never about dominance. It was about removing the possibility of betrayal forever. The human delegation concluded its address with a final statement. "You attacked us during a ceasefire," the representative said. "You targeted our civilians because you believed we would respond emotionally." She paused, letting the truth settle. We responded structurally. The delegation departed as calmly as it had arrived. Human ships lifted off and returned to formation. The planetary defenses remained inactive, not broken, simply no longer sovereign. Across coalition space, systems began receiving updates. Human oversight protocols integrated seamlessly into existing governance, not replacing leadership, monitoring it. War budgets were frozen. Fleet movements required dual authorization. Weapons testing demanded human countersignature. The galaxy was still free, just not free to kill humanity again. As panic turned into grim acceptance, a final realization spread through every corridor of power. Humanity had not risen in rage. Humanity has risen in responsibility. And that made them far more dangerous than anyone had ever imagined. Because Phase 4 would test something the galaxy had never prepared for. What happens when absolute power chooses mercy and remembers who did not? The galaxy's first instinct was resistance, not open war. That option had already been taken away, but defiance in quieter, more desperate forms. Pride does not vanish simply because weapons go silent. It festers. It looks for cracks. And the coalition had cracks everywhere. On dozens of worlds, local commanders attempted to bypass human oversight by reverting to analog systems, handwritten codes, and physically isolated command chains. Some dismantled networked infrastructure entirely, believing separation meant safety. Others leaned into ideology, telling their people that humanity's restraint was proof of weakness, that patience would eventually fracture control. Humanity watched all of it, not with anger, with interest. Phase 4 was never meant to suppress rebellion. It was designed to study intent. Human systems flagged every deviation, not as a crime, but as a question. Why did this world resist while another complied? Why did one fleet attempt to hide while another asked for guidance? Why did some leaders cling to weapons they could no longer use? Patterns emerged quickly. Civilizations that had attacked humanity directly were the most unstable. Their leadership structures were rigid, pride-based, and optimized for domination. They interpreted restraint as an insult, mercy as humiliation. Civilizations that had merely followed orders behaved differently. Fearful, yes, but adaptable. Curious, willing to trade sovereignty for safety. Humanity adjusted accordingly. On one rebellious world, a former coalition stronghold with a long history of conquest, underground militias began sabotaging their own infrastructure to create the illusion of human failure. Power grids failed. Transport systems collapsed. The media blamed human interference, even though no human system had touched them. The planet's leaders demanded humanity withdraw oversight. Humanity agreed. Completely. For exactly 6 hours. In those 6 hours, everything the leaders feared came true. Rival factions surged into the power vacuum. Stockpiles were seized. Borders ignited. Old grudges resurfaced with surgical speed. By the time the leaders begged humanity to return, the planet was on the edge of civil collapse. Human oversight resumed. The violence stopped within minutes. No soldiers landed. No shots were fired. Trade lanes reopened. Energy flowed again. Communications stabilized. The lesson was brutal and undeniable. Humanity was not the cause of instability. Humanity was the only thing preventing it. Elsewhere, a very different experiment unfolded. A minor coalition world, one that had voted against the original attack on humanity, but had been overruled, formally requested human protection. Not oversight, not control, protection. They offered transparency, full access to military planning, shared governance review, civilian safeguards enforced by human law. The request was granted. Within weeks, that world flourished. Piracy vanished from its trade lanes. Its economy surged under restored confidence. Refugees from neighboring systems fled there, not out of fear of humanity, but because of it. The galaxy noticed. A dangerous question began circulating through back channels and whispered councils. What if humanity is right? What if power restrained is safer than power unleashed? That question terrified the old empires more than fleets ever had. In response, a final gambit was made. Deep within coalition territory, a cabal of hardline leaders activated a contingency older than most of their civilizations, a command protocol known only to the highest bloodlines. It was designed for one purpose. If the coalition ever lost control, it would deny control to everyone. The protocol would trigger synchronized self-destruction across key infrastructure, shipyards, reactors, data vaults. If they could not rule, they would leave nothing worth ruling. The signal was sent. Humanity intercepted it. Not because they were watching the leaders, because they were watching the systems those leaders depended on. The human response was immediate and devastating in its subtlety. Instead of blocking the command, humanity allowed it to propagate, partially. Some systems received it. Others did not. On worlds where the population had embraced cooperation, safeguards were activated. Reactors throttled down safely. Shipyards shut off without damage. Lives were preserved. On worlds where leaders had hoarded control, ignored warnings, and suppressed transparency, systems obeyed exactly as designed. Facilities detonated. Shipyards were lost. Data vaults erased themselves. Humanity did not cause the destruction. They simply chose not to prevent it. The message was never spoken aloud, but everyone understood it. Humanity would not save those who tried to burn the galaxy out of spite. The fallout was immediate. The cabal was exposed, its members dragged from power by their own populations. Entire regimes collapsed overnight, not to human invasion, but to public fury once the truth came out. Humanity released the intercepted records to every major network, unedited and untranslated. Let the galaxy see. Let them decide. For the first time in living memory, galactic history shifted not because of force, but because of accountability. On Earth, debates raged. Humanity was no longer unified in silence. Philosophers, civilians, survivors of the attacks all argued the same question from different angles. Was this justice? Was this conquest disguised as order? Was humanity becoming the very thing it feared? The Seizure Council listened. Then it did something unexpected. It dissolved itself. In its place, a new structure formed, one that included non-human representatives. Observers at first, advisors later. Eventually, equals. Humanity did not want an empire. It wanted a system that could survive betrayal. Phase 4 ended not with a battle, but with a broadcast. Humanity addressed the galaxy openly for the first time since the ceasefire massacre. "We will not rule you," the human speaker said. "We will not erase your cultures or dictate your futures." A pause. "But we will never again allow the strong to prey on the unprotected." The broadcast showed images the galaxy could not ignore. Human medics treating alien wounded from old wars, engineers stabilizing failing stations, fleets standing guard over worlds that once would have burned. "This oversight will end," the speaker continued, "when the structures that led to betrayal are gone." No timeline was given. No threats were made. That uncertainty was deliberate, because the galaxy now understood something essential. Humanity was not testing its power. Humanity was testing everyone else's ability to live without abusing it. And somewhere, in the quiet between stars, the last remnants of resistance realized the truth too late. Phase 5 would not be about control. It would be about judgment. And humanity would remember exactly who had learned and who had not. Judgment did not arrive with fleets. That was the mistake many still made, expecting spectacle, threats, or ultimatums. They watched the stars for movement and missed what happened in rooms, records, and routines. Phase 5 unfolded quietly, everywhere. Humanity began by opening archives. Across the galaxy, sealed data vaults unlocked themselves at precisely the same moment. Not human archives, coalition archives. Records long buried under layers of classification and ritual secrecy spilled into the light. Not leaks, not hacks, authorized disclosures. Each file carried impeccable provenance. Digital signatures matched ancient seals. Verification chains aligned perfectly with coalition law. No one could dismiss them as fabrications without admitting their own systems were fraudulent. The content was devastating. Ceasefire violations buried by administrative corrections. Civilian casualty reports rewritten as collateral anomalies. Votes altered, objections erased. Dissenting delegates quietly removed from historical record. The attack on humanity was no anomaly, it was a precedent. Humanity did not comment. They let the galaxy read. Public outrage erupted in waves, not explosions. Markets stalled as investors realized entire regimes were built on lies. Citizens confronted leaders with evidence that could not be denied. Streets filled, not with riots, but with questions. Why were we told this was necessary? Who decided? Who benefited? On worlds where leaders answered honestly, humanity adjusted oversight downward. Restrictions loosened. Decision authority returned gradually, visibly. Trust was treated as something earned, not demanded. On worlds where leaders lied, doubled down, or blamed humanity for the revelations, oversight tightened. Not punitively. Precisely. Budgets froze. Discretionary powers were suspended. Military promotions required civilian countersignature. Propaganda networks lost amplification, their reach quietly throttled by algorithms that preferred verifiable truth over repetition. It was suffocating, not because it was harsh, but because it was fair. The old empires had survived by controlling narratives. Humanity removed that control without banning speech. Anyone could say anything, but only facts carried weight. In one core system, a ruler attempted a desperate gambit. He convened an emergency broadcast, denouncing humanity as occupiers and calling for a unified uprising. His speech was fiery, eloquent, and broadcast live across his world. It ended halfway through. Not cut. Corrected. Annotations appeared beside his words in real time. Dates, documents, casualty numbers, votes he had altered. Each claim he made was met with a citation drawn from his own archives. The crowd did not cheer. They stared. When the broadcast ended, the ruler fled. He was arrested by his own guards before he reached orbit. Humanity issued no arrest warrant. None was needed. Elsewhere, something more unexpected happened. Former enemies asked for guidance. Not protection, not control, advice. They wanted to know how humanity had done it, how a younger species had outmaneuvered civilizations 10 times its age without firing a shot. Human envoys answered carefully, often frustratingly so. We did not seek power, they said. We sought resilience. They explained humanity's core lesson, learned painfully over centuries of internal conflict. Systems that rely on virtue fail. Systems that rely on accountability endure. That answer unsettled many. It meant the problem was never aliens. It was unchecked authority. The galaxy's reaction split decisively. Some worlds embraced reform. They rewrote charters, decentralized command, empowered civilian oversight. In those worlds, human presence faded quickly. Oversight systems shifted to advisory mode. Human fleets moved on. Other worlds resisted reform with stubborn pride. They complied just enough to avoid restriction, but not enough to change. Humanity noted them, logged them, waited. Phase 5 was patient. Then came the reckoning that no one expected. Humanity released the ledger. It was not a blacklist. It was worse. The ledger was a transparent, public accounting of trust. Every civilization, government, and major institution was listed, not ranked by power, but by behavior. Compliance, transparency, civilian protection, conflict de-escalation. No judgments were attached, just data. Trade guilds began using the ledger to set terms. Shipping insurers adjusted rates. Academic exchanges favored high-trust worlds. Migration followed stability. The ledger reshaped the galaxy without a single decree. Those at the bottom screamed injustice. Those at the top asked how to stay there. Humanity said nothing. On Earth, the cost of all this finally surfaced. Veterans of the initial attack struggled with the restraint demanded of them. Survivors questioned whether justice had truly been served. Families of the dead asked why the attackers still lived. Human leaders did not silence those voices. They listened. A memorial was built, not to celebrate victory, but to remember the price of mercy. Names were carved without titles or ranks, just people. During the dedication, a human speaker addressed the crowd. We did not choose this path because it was easy, she said. We chose it because it ends wars instead of feeding them. Some were unconvinced. Humanity accepted that too, because Phase 5 was not about being loved. It was about being understood. The final test came from a place no one expected, a remote coalition remnant, poor, fractured, long ignored. Its leaders admitted their guilt openly. They released everything without prompting. They asked for help rebuilding systems they had never known how to govern without fear. Humanity responded immediately. Engineers arrived. Educators followed. Advisors helped design institutions from the ground up, not human replicas, but structures suited to local culture, with one requirement embedded at every level. No decision without accountability. The world stabilized. Then I thrived. That success shattered the last excuse. The galaxy could no longer claim humanity's approach was impossible, only inconvenient. Phase 5 concluded without announcement. One morning, the ledger updated. Several worlds vanished from it. Not removed. Graduated. Human oversight ended there completely. The message was clear at last. Humanity did not intend to rule forever. It intended to teach the galaxy how to stop needing rulers who could betray their own people. As the stars settled into a new, uneasy calm, those still clinging to old power structures felt something colder than fear. They felt irrelevant. Because Phase 6 was approaching. And Phase 6 would answer the final question. What happens when humanity decides the galaxy is ready or isn't? Readiness was never declared. That was the first thing the galaxy misunderstood about Phase 6. There was no announcement, no ceremony, no signal that the test had begun. No one woke up to a broadcast saying, "Now we see who you truly are." Instead, humanity stepped back. Not everywhere. Not completely. Just enough. Across hundreds of systems, human oversight quietly shifted from active correction to passive observation. Safeguards remained. Emergency locks stayed in place. But the constant nudges, the subtle rebalancing, the invisible hand that had prevented bad decisions from becoming disasters, were reduced. For the first time since the seizure began, the galaxy was allowed to choose without immediate consequence. That freedom was the test. In some worlds, nothing changed. Their systems had adapted. Accountability had become routine rather than enforced. Councils debated openly. Military leaders accepted civilian oversight as normal. Those worlds barely noticed humanity's absence. On others, cracks appeared almost instantly. Budgets quietly ballooned. Emergency powers were extended temporarily. Security forces were granted expanded authority with vague language and fewer checks. Nothing illegal. Nothing dramatic. Just familiar. Human monitors flagged the trends, but did not intervene. Phase 6 was observational. Then came the incident. It began on a border system far from any former human colony, a place that had escaped notice during the original war. Its government had complied just enough to avoid scrutiny. Its leaders smiled in public and whispered in private. When human presence faded, they moved quickly. A fleet was assembled under the guise of disaster response. Supplies were loaded. Weapons were powered, not activated, but ready. Orders were issued through analog channels humanity could still see, but chose not to block. The target was a neighboring system marked high on the ledger for transparency and cooperation. Old rivalries resurfaced. Old grudges found excuses. The attack did not succeed. It never had a chance to. Before the first shot could be fired, the attacking fleet found itself unable to cross the system boundary. Not locked. Not disabled. Redirected. Navigation systems recalculated routes with perfect logic, sending ships back to their own space as if they had simply made a mistake. Crews argued. Commanders shouted. Nothing changed. Humanity still did not speak. The attacking government accused humanity of interference. Humanity replied for the first time in weeks. Yes, the message said. And this was your final warning. That was all. The galaxy held its breath. What followed was not punishment. It was isolated. The offending system remained functional. Its people were unharmed. Its infrastructure is intact. But trade slowed. Diplomatic channels cooled. Exchanges paused. Advisors withdrew. The ledger updated. The system dropped. Not to the bottom. Just enough. Within months, the consequences were undeniable. Economic stagnation followed. Talent emigrated. Neighboring systems became cautious. Internal dissent grew louder. The government blamed humanity. Its people blamed their leaders. Humanity did nothing. Elsewhere, a different kind of failure emerged. In a world once ravaged by coalition wars, a newly empowered civilian council faced its first real crisis, an energy shortage caused by decades of neglect. The temptation to seize control, override procedures, and centralize authority was overwhelming. They did not. They followed the process, slow and painful as it was. They invited external auditors. They accepted criticism. They took responsibility publicly. The crisis worsened before it improved. Humanity watched. Then, quietly, emergency assistance arrived, not as intervention, but as partnership. Engineers arrived under local authority. Resources flowed through transparent channels. Credit was given where it was due. The world rose on its own terms. The galaxy noticed that too. By now, The pattern was impossible to ignore. Humanity was not testing strength. It was testing restraint. On Earth, the debate grew sharper. Some argued Phase 6 was cruel, that allowing failure risked lives, that humanity had a moral duty to prevent harm wherever possible. Others warned that permanent intervention would turn humanity into a caretaker no one could escape. The Seizure Council, reborn as an open, multi-species forum, heard every argument. Then it made a decision that shocked even its own members. Phase 6 would include humanity itself. Human oversight over Earth's external military posture was partially lifted. Emergency powers granted during the crisis were sunset. Independent audits were invited. Not symbolic ones, but real, invasive reviews conducted by non-human observers. Human institutions passed. Not perfectly, but honestly. Mistakes were acknowledged. Reforms were enacted. No one was shielded by status or history. The message was unmistakable. Humanity was not exempt from the rules it enforced. That realization spread faster than any fleet ever had. The final challenge came without malice. A coalition world with no history of aggression, no strategic importance, and no grievances against humanity submitted a simple request. They asked to be left entirely alone. No oversight, no advisors, no ledger participation, just distance. The request sparked fierce debate. Some saw it as a loophole, an attempt to escape accountability. Others argued sovereignty meant the right to fail privately. Humanity considered the request carefully. Then I approved it. All human systems are disengaged. All monitoring ceased. The ledger marked the world as unobserved by choice. Years passed. The world did not collapse. It did not rise dramatically either. It simply existed, quiet, imperfect, free. That outcome unsettled many. It proved humanity was not addicted to control. It could let go. As Phase 6 drew to a close, the galaxy stood changed but unfinished. Some systems thrived under accountability. Others stumbled. A few resisted and paid the price of isolation rather than destruction. Humanity has not solved the galaxy. It had reshaped the rules by which power operated. And now only one question remained. Not whether humanity was strong enough to rule, but whether the galaxy was mature enough to rule itself. Because Phase 7 would force an answer. Not through enforcement, not through judgment, but through something far more dangerous. Choice. Choice exposed what power never could. Phase 7 did not begin with an ultimatum or a deadline. Humanity did not demand alignment or threaten consequence. Instead, it did something that unsettled even its closest observers. It asked a question and waited. Across the galaxy, a simple framework was distributed. Not a treaty, not a law, a proposal. Each civilization was invited to decide, publicly and permanently, which of three paths it would take. The first path was autonomy. Full sovereignty. No human oversight. No ledger participation. No intervention unless explicitly requested. The cost was isolation, reduced access to shared infrastructure, slower trade, and no guarantees of collective defense. The second path was collective accountability. Shared standards. Transparent governance. Mutual defense and mutual restraint. Participation in the ledger and in a new interstellar forum where no single species held veto power, not even humanity. The third path was dominion. The old way. Absolute internal control. Militarized authority. Centralized power unchecked by civilians. Those who chose this path would not be attacked, but they would not be protected. Humanity made one thing clear. This is not a vote for or against us, the broadcast said. This is a declaration of how you intend to treat yourselves and others when no one is forcing you. The galaxy reacted violently, not with weapons, but with argument. Worlds split internally. Governments fractured. Citizens debated openly for the first time in generations. On some planets, the discussion was calm and measured. On others, it turned raw and dangerous. Choosing meant committing, and commitment meant giving something up. In a heavily industrialized world with a long history of authoritarian rule, the leadership pushed for dominion. They framed it as cultural preservation, strength, independence. They promised safety through force. The people remembered the archives. They remembered the seizures. They remembered what happened when unchecked leaders made decisions alone. The vote was close. Dominion lost by less than 1%. The leadership refused to accept the result. They declared the vote invalid, citing emergency powers and foreign interference. Humanity did not respond. The people did. The streets filled, not with riots, but with bodies standing silently in public squares. Millions of them. No signs. No chants. Just presence. Security forces received orders to disperse them. They hesitated. Not because of fear of humanity, but because they were standing in front of their families. The orders were never carried out. The government collapsed within a week. The world chose collective accountability. Elsewhere, a warrior culture with deep traditions of honor and conquest shocked everyone by choosing autonomy. Their leaders spoke openly. "We do not trust empires," they said. "Not yours. Not ours. We will live with the consequences of our own decisions." Humanity accepted the choice. Trade slowed. Influence waned. But the culture remained intact. Free. Responsible only for itself. The galaxy began to understand something profound. Humanity was not sorting civilizations by worth. It was sorting them by intent. Those who sought power over others gravitated toward dominion. Those who sought safety without surrender chose collective accountability. Those who valued freedom above certainty accepted autonomy. None were punished. None were praised. The consequences were structural, not moral. Still, there were those who believed they could cheat. A coalition remnant chose collective accountability publicly while secretly maintaining hidden fleets and black-budget weapons. They assumed humanity's patience meant blindness. They were wrong. Humanity did not expose them immediately. It waited until the moment mattered most. A border dispute escalated between that remnant and a neighboring autonomous world. The remnant mobilized its hidden forces, confident it could strike quickly and deny responsibility. Humanity intervened, not with fleets, but with disclosure. In real time, as the remnant's leaders denied mobilization, their own hidden shipyards appeared on public feeds. Construction logs. Weapons manifest. Orders signed by the very officials speaking. The Collective Accountability Forum voted unanimously. The remnant was removed from the collective. Not attacked. Removed. All shared protections ended instantly. The neighboring world, though autonomous, was offered assistance. It accepted limited defense support without surrendering sovereignty. The remnant stood alone. Its leadership resigned within days. No civilization ever attempted deception again. As choices locked in across the galaxy, the new structure solidified, not an empire, not an alliance, but a balance. Humanity held no throne. It held a standard. On Earth, the weight of it all finally pressed down. Humanity had survived betrayal. It had seized control. It had reshaped galactic power. But Phase 7 forced a reckoning at home. Were humans ready to live by the same rules forever? Some argued humanity should now step back entirely, that it had done enough, proven enough, and risked becoming what it once feared. Others argued that leaving too soon would undo everything. The debate was not resolved in chambers or councils. It was resolved in action. Humanity announced it would take the same choice it offered others. Earth chose collective accountability, not autonomy, not dominion. It bound itself permanently to the same transparency, oversight, and restraint as everyone else. That decision changed everything. For the first time, the galaxy truly believed this was not a human empire in disguise. It was a system that could exist without humanity at its center. Phase 7 ended quietly. Votes finalized. Declarations archived. Borders stabilized, not by force, but by expectation. And yet, beneath the calm, something new stirred. Because for the first time in known history, the galaxy was not united by fear of destruction, but by the shared risk of responsibility. Phase 8 loomed, not as a threat, but as a consequence. The final phase would not test governments. It would test civilizations. And the question it would answer was the most dangerous of all. What does the galaxy become when no one is allowed to hide behind power anymore? The galaxy did not end with fire. That surprised historians later when they tried to explain what Phase 8 truly was. For millennia, galactic eras had always closed the same way, through extinction events, collapsing empires, or wars so large they rewrote star charts. Everyone expected the final phase to look like judgment or enforcement, or humanity finally revealing a weapon no one could stop. Instead, Phase 8 arrived as inheritance. Humanity began withdrawing, not dramatically, not suddenly, but deliberately. Fleets that had hovered at system edges for years slipped back into deep space. Oversight protocols transferred authority to local institutions that had proven capable of restraint. Human advisors stepped down, replaced by multi-species councils trained under shared standards. Nothing collapsed. That was a shock. Trade continued. Borders held. Disputes were argued instead of escalated. When violence did break out, and it still did, because civilizations are not cured overnight, it was contained by neighbors rather than suppressed by humans. For the first time, the galaxy was running itself. And for the first time, I was afraid. Because there was no one left to blame. On a former coalition capital world, a memorial was built where a war council chamber once stood. It did not honor leaders or victories. It listed dates, betrayals, purges, silenced votes, hidden massacres. Entire school curricula were rewritten around it. Children asked questions their grandparents never could. Why didn't anyone stop this? The answer was always the same. Because no one thought they were allowed to. That idea, allowed, became the quiet revolution humanity left behind. Across the stars, civilizations began to understand the final lesson. Power had never been the problem. Even violence had not been the true disease. The problem was permission without accountability. Humanity had not taken the galaxy's weapons. It had taken away the excuse to use them. On Earth, the last human fleets returned home. Not in triumph. Not in formation. They came back scattered, worn, and quiet. Veterans did not march. Leaders did not give speeches. Instead, humanity did something deeply uncomfortable. It faced its death. Monuments rose on Earth and across human colonies. Not heroic statues, not banners of conquest, but empty spaces. Seats left unfilled. Homes were reconstructed exactly as they had been before the attacks, then left unoccupied. The message was never spoken aloud, but every human understood it. This is what betrayal costs. This is why restraint matters. A delegation from the Collective Accountability Forum arrived on Earth soon after. For the first time, humans sat as one voice among many, not overseers, not arbiters, just participants. A question was placed on the agenda. It had been avoided for years. What happens if this fails? The room was silent. Finally, a human representative answered. Then we will fail with you, she said. And we will face the consequences together. That answer spread farther than any fleet ever had. Because it meant the galaxy's future was no longer enforced by fear of humanity. It was protected by shared risk. Not everyone accepted it. There were still worlds that chose dominion, isolated, armed, suspicious. Humanity did not invade them. It did not sanction them into collapse. It simply drew boundaries and waited. History would decide their fate. And history now had witnesses. Years passed. The ledger updated less frequently. Graduations outpaced demotions. Children on worlds that once feared extinction grew up never knowing what it felt like to live under an empire's shadow, or humanity's. The term seizure faded from use, replaced by something quieter. The correction. Not because humanity had corrected the galaxy, but because the galaxy had corrected itself. In the end, humanity left behind no throne, no crown, no permanent authority. What it left was more dangerous than any empire. A precedent. That betrayal would not be answered with rage. That power would not be allowed to hide. That mercy, once proven possible, could never again be dismissed as weakness. In the final archived address of the era, recorded not by humans, but by a joint historical council, a single sentence closed the record. They attacked humanity in war, believing it would respond like every empire before it. A pause followed in the transcript, deliberate, measured. They were wrong. Because humanity did not conquer the galaxy. Humanity ended the lie that conquest was inevitable. And once that lie was gone, the stars did not burn. They endured.